All right, welcome to the next podcast. I think today Naveen and I are going to talk about a fun topic, which is technology addiction. But I think I'll turn it over to Naveen. And before we discuss technology addiction, let's try to define addiction. What do you define addiction as?
Oh, that's a good one. So I think you understand biology better than me, but the way I sort of abstractly think about it is, we use the word hit, right? So it's like you're doing something, you're kind of into it, and then maybe you're willing to go do something else in life, and then you get this hit, and you're like, oh, I got to keep doing this, right? That to me is a standard addiction loop, right? And so in technology, I think of it as it's the thing that keeps you going, right? Your attention never drifts away because you keep getting these little attention hits that keep you engaged. I don't know if that...
Yeah. So if I kind of go back to the biology side of that, I think that's right. Brain chemistry is interesting because the way the brain developed was largely part of our genetic evolution to keep us alive. And the brain has like 100 plus neurotransmitters. But if we boil down addiction into...
Like neurotransmission, chemicals.
Chemicals. So serotonin and dopamine being the two primary ones that go into the brain chemistry of addiction.
Okay.
So serotonin is a negative, like, hey, tamp down, bring you down type thing. And dopamine is here's your hit. When you were talking about the hit, it's like an increase in dopamine levels in your brain.
Okay.
That was generally built in brain chemistry for flight or fight. Dopamine was raised when it was your brain wanting to make you remember this thing. It's like, this is a memorable thing. This is a good thing. You need to remember this thing. And serotonin levels were increased when it's like, this is noise. You don't need to do it. You need to relax. This is not something you need to commit to long-term memory.
Okay.
Right? So I'm overly simplifying. There's a lot more to it. But if I overly simplify, the hit you talked about is increase in dopamine. Now, so I think that's just how the brain works. And generally, it's a good thing, right? It's a good thing to say, I should remember more important things and I should not remember other things. But the loop, I think your definition was apt in that whenever you're in a dopamine loop, where you're consistently wanting to crave and increase that dopamine, that's a sign of addiction.
Okay.
Right? Now, in my lens, I wouldn't define that as addiction as bad or addiction as good. It's just addiction.
Huh.
I don't think addiction is bad. I just think it's a thing.
Do you have an example of an addiction that's not bad?
So I'll give you some things that are debatable.
Okay. That's fair.
Some people are addicted to work.
That's okay. We talked about that in the previous one.
Right.
That's
so
fair. Yes.
Good or bad? I don't know. It's a choice.
Fair. That's fair.
Right.
And I lean into that one. I'm okay with that one.
Some people are addicted to acts of love.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right. So anything, you can create a dopamine loop of a hit on anything. That could be good behavior. That could be bad behavior. Right. So
would you at least say that by and large, though, that when we talk about addiction, maybe it's that we focus on the bad behavior?
100%.
And so we tend to associate it with a bad thing.
100%. So like the traditional things people think about with addiction is drugs, alcohol, gambling were the original three.
Yeah.
I think, and eventually technology and social media became prevalent, and now AI addiction is starting to become prevalent.
And I think technology, hand in hand with technology, has always been porn, right?
Porn addiction hand in hand with technology. But even pre-technology, there was porn addiction. It was just harder.
Technology enabled it. Right?
Technology was an enabling factor. So let's, before we get into any nefarious dystopian views of addiction, let's just say that you're in a loop of hitting dopamine, right? Now...
And actually, can we add another aspect that I guess we didn't mention was, I think something about it is keeping you in that loop to the exclusion of other things that you might actively be interested in for your own well-being or others, your concern for others, right?
Well, I think the clinical definition does put that in, like if you look up the clinical definition of addiction, I think it does state that it's when you're not in control over those things.
Yeah.
Meaning, yes, there's some things you're doing to the detriment of other things that you should be doing that you want to do, meaning this is outside of your control.
Yep.
If I also, one kind of thing on the biology side, however, as well, is there's a lot of research that talks about genetics, nature versus nurture in this camp of addiction. So they've done a lot of studies around, and I think there was this famous Finnish study because apparently Finnish return government surveys at like 90% or something crazy versus us in America. But basically, they studied adolescents around alcohol addiction, and there was a control group and 2 sample groups, and there was a group that, just exposed to the same things, raised the same way, et cetera, but there were people with genetic predisposition to addiction versus people not, like in the same circumstances, same class, same opportunity,
Yep.
and others were not. So I think there are, and we've heard stories of like, hey, my dad was a gambler, I'm a gambler, like there's genetic predisposition to addictive behavior. That does exist.
Yes.
And that genetic predisposition to addictive behavior, which I see in my daughter, by the way, and I don't think I have it, but I'm not sure, is not tied to a domain, meaning it's addiction. It's not alcohol addiction. It's not drug addiction. It's not technology addiction. It's addiction.
Yeah.
So because of the way the brain chemistry works, anything that creates that dopamine response is something you can get addicted to.
You might be addicted to curiosity, which is maybe not a bad thing, right?
Well, we can get into that, but like, reading and curiosity. I might have certain things.
You need to try new things all the time, yeah.
Yeah, so, and is that good or is that bad?
That's definitely not in the bad camp.
Could be.
Yeah.
My wife thinks so. It's like you have too many hobbies, right? So, okay, let's dig into technology addiction,
Yep.
right? What's your kind of thesis on where technology addiction is today?
So technology addiction is really interesting. So I'll qualify it with, I grew up, I think we both grew up kind of in the phase where what we'd call modern technology was really taking hold. So let's say PCs in the household, gaming consoles in the household. I mean, tablets and phones being computing devices that you use in your hand happened in our lifetimes, right? So a lot of my early exposure to that was as I'm growing up playing, video games on computers or consoles or things like that. And I don't think I really thought of it as a addictive thing. I thought it was super fun. I enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. And so I've always kind of had that as a underpinning to my interpretation of technology. Like every time I got exposed to technology, I got sucked into it. But I mean, I learned computer science. I learned what computers are. I learned perseverance because like beating some of these games was so dang hard. I actually there's core parts of what I take pride in my own personality that come from my growth with technology. So,
but let me ask if that was addiction, because based on your definition, were you ever out of control?
Well, so I guess I say all of that to say I want to qualify what does technology mean to me before we get into technology addiction. Because everything I just mentioned, like video games, even just like reading stuff online, whatever, all of that has turned into a lot of the things we consider addiction today. So when people talk about technology addiction today, I think people imagine a few different things. One is, you're on the endless TikTok or Instagram scroll, right? And an hour goes by and it's like, what happened with your life, right? Yeah. Another one that is also common is the video game addiction loop. So with the advent of like massively multiplayer online games, and you can basically spend your entire life in a video game, and the games are really good and they're very good at keeping your attention, and you may not do anything else, right? Mm-hmm. To the detriment of your health, your relationships, all those things. Now there's positive sides, and I want to get into that too. That I think it has become a real problem, particularly as children now are growing up in a very different way than we did, which is this stuff is just readily available. It's like air. It's just there, right?
And that's one thing I want to hit, because if I go back to that nature versus nurture, what has changed, and they've actually done some studies on this around, you may have a genetic predisposition to addiction. A certain percentage of the population does. But it may never get triggered because access.
Yeah.
Right? Access, is part of the equation.
That's a fair point.
So if you look at the historical view of how addiction has changed, like alcohol addiction, there was a point where it was very accessible, not accessible, more accessible, less accessible.
Right.
We've gone through accessibility curves, and if you follow alcohol addiction based on access and chart that over time, it pretty much correlates fairly well, right? Because a certain percentage is going to be the high addiction, cohort, and if you're just never exposed, you never get addicted to that thing, right?
That's right.
Now, I would argue that if you've got an addictive personality and your brain's that, and it's in your genetics and whatever, you'll get addicted to something else.
Yeah.
It's here's my addiction quota. I just need to get addicted to something. Maybe it'll be something better, right? That's why.
Yeah. Hopefully it's exercise or something like that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
That's another one.
I think I went through that phase.
Yeah.
Now that you say it, I'm like, man, I might actually have addictive tendencies, right? You're making me question. I'm like, oh man, why did I work out 7 hours a day for 3 years of my life? You know what I mean? I went down an addiction rabbit hole.
Yep.
But
so yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that that is maybe the subtext to this conversation of technology addiction that's important, right? Which is that it's just everywhere, and I think when we talk about how should we, good or bad or things like that, my concern about technology is just its pervasiveness. It's in every part of our lives, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, the mobile phone made that happen, right?
Exactly.
I think the moment it was in your pocket, I think we can agree that accessibility is now rampant for technology. You can't go anywhere without access to technology.
Yep.
And people have anxiety if they're like, I left my phone at home.
Exactly.
Right?
I do.
So, so I think we all agree that, technology, accessibility, that's now part of the new norm.
Yep.
Now, one thing I'd like to dig into is, as a computer scientist, as a gamer, etc., have you been taught on how to program addictive loop behaviors?
Oh, how to create them?
Because
that's
someone's creating, yes, the accessibility is there.
Yeah.
But we're taking that accessibility and putting it on steroids by
true.
creating the concept of TikTok and Instagram, this reinforcement, there's active energy to create addiction. There's companies and GDPs and economies.
Yep.
Even gaming companies with I ran out of ammo.
Yep.
There's now research that they actually put sensors on your brain as they're developing these games.
Yep.
To figure out what triggers the dopamine response.
That's actually a very interesting conversation, because one of the things I do want to get into is a lot of these things, the reason you get addicted to them is that you get, I think you're getting the dopamine response because you're perceiving something of value to you, right? That's not fundamentally, that's not bad. What I think it's bad is when it's almost malicious, right? To the point where, now I'm going to exploit that. And as a person who tries to create software or would aspire to make a video game someday, I don't think I would ever do that on purpose. I wouldn't do it to the point of I want to take advantage of you. I think of, Candy Crush being a game like that, where I want you to never stop playing this game, right? I wouldn't want
Candy Crush is that, right? It was designed to never end.
Exactly.
I think because the difference is when you and I were growing up in gaming, games end.
Yeah.
You struggled to persevere and beat the bad guy and finish the game.
Yep.
There was an ending.
Typically, yeah.
Now, do games really have endings?
Yeah, and we can get into that, and I think that is an aspect of it. But I think there's another aspect to it, which is, if I'm making a game, I want it to be fun. And if you're going to make something fun, you're going to, by nature, kind of be triggering some of the same.
Fun is dopamine response.
So it's not bad that it's fun. This gets back to good or bad. Am I malicious because I made a game that was fun, or am I supposed to be making really boring games? That's a terrible game design, right?
Yeah.
So I think game design by its nature means that you're trying to make it fun and enjoyable and keep it engaging.
Yeah.
I think, and maybe I'm naive, I think most game developers are not doing it from a malicious intent perspective. I think they're actually just doing it from the perspective of they are passionate about games, they enjoy it, they've seen value in it, they want you to have fun, right? Not, and I can give you examples.
It's like you're such an optimist.
It could be. So it's entirely possible that's not true. But I mean, I'll give you some examples. So some of the games I play right now, because by the way, the other thing I think we could talk about games, then we could talk about social media. Like I think they're two very different universes.
Yeah.
You know, I think when people think of games nowadays, they think of first-person shooters, right?
Fortnite.
Fortnite. Like Fortnite's a great example, which, you know, and there's pros and cons to that one. Not my favorite game, but I don't hate it. Or they think of like World of Warcraft, right, where you're on a massively multiplayer game, you never leave. Like, but even in those games, just to put it out there, because I do think people need to understand this, they are social. Like I have nephews and nieces who some of their friend network are social, like online. They know these people, and then they meet them in the real world later. So, you know, there is this false story of, you know, it's entirely solitary and you're not interacting. Now, what I also want to call out is there's lots of other games. So I play like a factory game with some of my friends online after our kids go to bed, right? And it reminds me of doing work. Like I'm building this really crazy, complicated factory that just takes time.
SimCity.
It knows way more you're just making stuff. Like, you know, input goes in, it goes through this factory, blah, 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 and it becomes a sea of stuff. And it's complicated. And like, why am I doing this? This is what I do in my day job. You know, but SimCity is similar in a more of a city building game. Yeah. Civilization teaches you economics, and you know, these are simulators, and simulators are used to teach you things, right? And so I actually learned some of the mechanics of the world through it. So I just wanted to like qualify it as I really don't believe those game designers were being evil. I think they were just trying to make something fun.
Like I find that digital twins, right? And we can define digital twin, but a digital twin, which is a simulation of the real world for teaching and educational purposes, I think is generally a positive thing.
Yeah, and you can make a game out of that.
Right. So, and gamifying digital twins for gamifying education, I also think is positive.
Yeah, and right? Like in SimCity, a great example. Like you learn. Yeah, I mean, is it like a teaching tool? Like I don't want to take it that far, but
I would.
But there's some things you learn. There's some things you learn in there, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to qualify. But I think there's these other classes of games that Candy Crush, I'm pretty sure was malicious. Like,
it has to be.
It has to be. Like I don't know why anyone would be like, I'm going to make a gem game that is going to be so fun, right?
It never ends.
That never
constant
ends,
loop,
right?
Which is but social media started, like if you go back before social media, right, and go to marketing, when people ran commercials and ads and everything was about like a good advertisement created an imprint value or a jingle for you to memorize, which was triggering a dopamine response, even pre-technology.
Yeah.
We just got better at it when we had technology.
Yep.
But the whole purpose of marketing is to create a memorable event.
Yep.
The science and psychology of marketing is triggering dopamine response. And the moment you put it in a recursive loop, you've created addiction.
So like, I mean, and this is where like, so is a marketing person trying to exploit me? Like, I'll be like 100%. Yeah. I'm just more like, is a game designer or somebody trying to build technology, trying to, like, so let's take Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
I think they stumbled into the addictive loop. I don't think they were looking for it.
Well, I agree with that because initially they didn't know how to make money.
Yep.
Right. Facebook started with like college campuses connecting with friends.
Exactly.
And everyone's like, they're losing $1 billion this year.
Right. Like,
how are they going to make money? And when they figured out ads was their primary monetary source to run the business, right? Then it was like game over. Like you're bringing the business incentive. This is why I think when you're like, people do the right thing, I'm like, you work for a company that's trying to make money.
Exactly. Fair. So I think that was where it really triggered was what's the source of revenue? I think that is actually an important aspect of this because Candy Crush and TikTok and Facebook and all, they're going to get money by how many ads they put in front of you.
Yeah.
Which means they need your attention.
Yep.
That is literally the only thing they're vying for is their attention, right? So. And I just want to compare that against other things that we use. Like, let's talk about GPT and AI tools, right? Their value is helping you do things, right? That's not and
We're in the early days of where Facebook was, where you don't know how to make money with these things.
That's fair.
They're all losing money,
yeah.
right? And the per token thing isn't going to be the solve.
You know what's really
like human population will need a freemium model, and they'll be starting to sell bias for advertisement to your AI models.
It's actually funny. I think we're our own worst enemy because, okay, let's go back to Facebook.
Yeah.
If we as a society were just willing to pay like $10 a month or whatever to get the service, and then you'd actually get a better product that is making you want to pay for it versus something that's just trying to spam ads to you, right?
Yeah.
But I think all of us would be like, I'm not going to pay for that. Like
That's insane.
Right? I'd rather have an addiction loop that just jams ads in my face all day long than pay $10 a month, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you're right. It's the monetary incentive, but I think us as consumers, we're part of the problem.
Okay, so how do you deal with it? Like, what about your kids? Like, what's your game plan?
Yeah, I think it comes to, and actually you shared, I think Governor Newsom's looking at trying to reduce time in the schools. Right?
Yeah, so his answer, right, for those who you don't know, we're in California. There was a state law with Newsom that was signed into effect. I'm actually got a notice from my school asking for a survey of what they're going to do around limiting access to phones in schools, right, for the student population. Right now, schools have to comply with the state thing, and they're trying to figure out what it means. And everyone's like, do we confiscate their phones on the way in? Do we set up penalties if they use them? Like, do we allow it for emergencies? Everyone's trying to figure out what it means.
Yep.
But the purpose, like the goal, is access reduction.
Exactly, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with that, which is, I mean, I think hopefully I've convinced people that I like technology. If you take away technology from me, I'll be like, what are you, like a Philistine? Like, I don't understand, right? So, but at the same time, I do think it's important to contain it and have time without technology, right? And if that needs to be forced, then so be it. I do think kids growing up need to experience life in the absence of their devices.
Well, so I'll go out and share, a silly kind of example of my history of I had conservative parents, first generation immigrant parents, who were fairly restrictive.
I did too.
Yeah. Who were fairly restrictive and took drugs are bad, alcohol's bad, whatever. And all it did was, I'm like, in my rebellious teenage years, I'm like, I'm going to drink,
I'm an American. This is about independence.
Independence, you know what I mean? You can't keep me down. So
exactly.
I kind of dispel the notion of reduction in access. You know what I mean? Like my thing,
it's artificial, yeah.
Having grown up,
that's true.
Like all that does is make me want to do it more.
Yeah. So what I have experienced, another thing I'll qualify. So I got to go to a Montessori until I was like in 5th grade. So I really wanted that for my kids. I found one around here that my kids go to. A policy they had, which I was not interested in, but I actually like now, is a no screens policy until I think like middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And they even teach like programming early on to elementary kids. And I was like, I don't even understand. What? How can you teach programming without, what does this mean?
Abacus.
Exactly. And so it's like, this is just nonsense. But one of the things that I've liked about it is it created a zero access technology thing that I didn't have to fight my kids on, right? Like, it's not like
you're not the restriction.
Nothing got taken away. They never got to experience that could be a thing, right? They're still young, and they're my son's 9, my daughter's 5, so we'll get there. But I think you're right. If it's something you're taking away, totally, people are going to rebel. But I think we as a society need to create these norms of, hey, there's times when you don't use technology. It's just good for you.
Yeah. If I share my kids' kind of story, and what was interesting is we kind of operated even in the home, and my kids did Montessori as well, and there was no technology at school.
Yep.
But even at home, we just never were into it. You know what I mean? There was never, like when my kids were growing up, it's like, yeah, Friday night we would watch a Disney movie or something. But there was never they never got a phone or an iPad early. They didn't have their own personal device growing up.
Yep.
And I don't think they really asked or needed it. Every once in a while, like when we're traveling, I'm like, here's Mickey Mouse on the phone on a plane.
Yep.
Right? And then they'd ask for it like later. And I'm like, no, that was for the plane. And they'd be like, okay. There was never this like missing out, right? At the time, but they developed a joy of a lot of non-technical things. My daughter prefers physical books versus Kindles. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, and then COVID happened, and everything was screen time all the time.
Exactly. That was what I was going to say.
It was like, and it all died in COVID.
That's what
you know.
happened to me.
So then I was like, okay, you can't fight the world. Everything's on Zoom. They're on a screen every day. But we made conscious effort to like, okay, afterwards, you're not doing Zoom extracurriculars. We're going out and playing in the backyard. You know what I mean? We had to like counterbalance it because we're forced into a technology thing during that period.
Yep.
And you can't then come back from that, right?
Yep, exactly.
So now it's less about access and more about education for me.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
Like,
fair.
so the same discussions you and I are having, I have with my kids about addiction.
We do too.
I'm
Yeah,
like
I do.
serotonin, dopamine, like brain chemistry.
Yeah,
like,
my 9-year-old son loves these conversations.
yeah, and it's weird where kids are different nowadays. They're like,
It's like, okay, yeah, I get it, you know. But,
yeah. So I had
but I
my,
think it's important.
different story. My 12-year-old son was like, I'm having hormonal issues right now. Like I don't know what I'm feeling, but I can tell my brain is like, like making me feel things that I don't, that aren't happy thoughts, like,
exactly.
and I was just like, okay, your communication style is a little interesting, but
Yeah.
like when you have these discussions that are meta aware of these concepts.
Yep.
So then if there's ever a situation where like my son has like, hey, whatever, like done something on his phone where I'm like, are you in this loop? And he's like, oh shit, I'm in the loop.
Exactly.
Like it's
Just
got me.
recognize it.
So I think for any addiction, there's kind of two strategies that I would recommend. One is education and awareness of what addiction is.
That's fair.
And probably the second one is awareness of where you're at on the spectrum. My son is very easy to pull out. My daughter, when I taught her how to play poker, like she's like, can I borrow a watch? You know what I mean? Like when she's losing, she can't walk away. Like I'm worried if she ever goes to a casino, she'll like,
Yeah.
what do I have to sell? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, ooh, I learned something new by teaching you poker, right?
Yeah.
So teach your kids poker, you'll learn so much, right? But it was a very clear indication that she's got
Yeah.
a stronger addiction and affinity. And then if you've got a strong addiction affinity, choose your poison is my kind of third thing. I'm like, well, if
Yeah.
you're going to be addicted, choose good things to be addicted to.
I haven't thought about that. I've really taken the mindful approach, which is like, hey, just be aware of it. But you're right. I haven't thought about, well, what if it's just a core part of your personality?
personality.
Yeah, you're right. Then you have to figure something out. So
So do you have do you think you have personally addictive tendencies?
100%. Yeah. Like there's chemicals that if I used them, I would be like, oh yeah, that would be the end of me. So I will never eat. Like I learned what it is. I'm not going to touch it, right? And so like that would be just the way my brain works. Like I'd imagine I would have a huge Coke addiction. I would imagine. I don't know. I think that's the kind of stuff I like. I love caffeine, right? Like
I love caffeine.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I was like, ooh, caffeine.
exactly. So
Like I think I got a dopamine hit just when you said the word caffeine. I was like, ooh.
And so there's certain drugs that I'm like, okay, not a good idea for me. And then I think video games are the same thing. Like I really do like games, but I'm also I think when I choose to play games, I'm looking for the games that I'm going to get something out of it. I'm not going to be like, oh, everyone like really likes this game, so I'm going to play it. Like, hey, I'm looking for a particular type of game, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how I manage it, right? So,
What about do you have healthy addictions?
I mean, we talked about the work one. That's debatable. I have one that I would call stubbornness / an obsession, but maybe it's an addiction. Like I'm really obsessed with my nutrition, like what I'm eating and things like that.
Is that temporal? Is it just now or has it been continuous?
I think it's been relatively continuous, but I've gotten more strict as I gotten older. But I think I've always thought about things like that. So like and then actually I use that when I communicate with my kids, like sugar. Like, hey, when you're playing this game, it's very similar to the thing you're facing when you eat sugar, right?
Yeah, sugar is very clearly.
And that helped them understand it, right? And so, I think I've always had that one. I don't know. I've never thought about it as a positive thing, so I'll have to reflect on that.
Okay, so let's go into AI then. Right? So how does AI change technology addiction, or does it?
I think it's going to make it way easier to make loops. So we've already talked about how a conversational AI can be engaging like you're talking to a real person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're already seeing those things being created as ways of engaging you.
Okay, so if you were to project, right, because we agree that the iPhone was one step where it kind of was fuel on the flame because of access. We've increased access.
Right.
But the content and domain spaces for addiction from increased access were largely porn and games and social media. 3 things.
Yep.
Does AI just do more in those 3 domains, or are there new domain spaces of addiction that, like, AI is the iPhone, and what are the new domain spaces of addiction being created?
Yeah. I think there's a relationship. I don't know what the right word is, but it's we do have a genuine need to connect with other individuals, right? And
So-
it can fill that.
So digital relationships, you think is one form of addiction. We talked about that.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, so that's the obvious one, I think.
What others? I'm going to push you.
Nothing else really comes to mind. I think of it, I'm still, you called me an optimist, but I'm still pretty optimistic about it. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great.
Yeah. So, look, I think self-driving cars will happen.
Yeah.
I think AI will power self-driving.
Yeah, and that's not an addiction. Like I think
I don't know that that'll create an addiction. I think that'll create a new norm.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'm curious.
Maybe we could build devices. So like maybe this is what our consumer products should be doing for us. But like Apple Intelligence, maybe it could be like, hey, by the way, I'm going to break this loop for you for a little while.
Screen Time is trying to do that, right? They added Screen Time to be like, hey.
Yeah.
But they're more for parents, for kids, I think,
That's
was
right.
their target audience.
But, so we'll see.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Any final words?
No, I mean, I think just, I think the only thing that I'm trying to get at is technology. I think there's this tendency to vilify technology as a whole. I think that's a mistake. I think the conversation is really about addiction and understanding the things that are going to cause you to have addictive behavior. Just like it's like food. If you were like, okay, candy and Lay's company has figured out how to make me eat food nonstop, that doesn't mean food is bad.
Okay, I want to dig into this food thing, right? So GLP-1, you familiar with GLP-1?
Yes, a little bit, yeah.
Right. So GLP-1 works in 2 ways, right? Absolutely, antigens in GLP-1 help you with your weight loss. But one of the reasons why it continues to work is because it removes the dopamine levels that increase with your food hits. So it reduces your drive and your motivation to continue overeating as well.
Okay.
Right? And there have been some clinicians and clinical trials in food where their clinicians are now trying to say, does it reduce alcohol consumption for alcohol addicts?
Yep.
Because if I posit that addiction is addiction.
Yeah. Doesn't matter what it is. Yeah.
And if I also posit addiction isn't good or bad, because addiction also helps us strive, helps us learn, makes us curious. Like,
yep.
There's good addictions.
Yep.
Will GLP-1 reduce the drive of society?
There's some, yeah. I mean, that I've heard some other podcasts talking about that as well. I think Trevor Noah did one.
Yeah.
That, right? And that is concerning. I don't want us to become mindless. Let's take this to extreme. You treat addiction by just making us like mindless zombies, right? Like I don't think GLP-1 does that, but it takes away something, right? And
Yeah, that's my fear, right? I don't know. It's not medically researched. It's a fear, right? I take a look at ADHD.
Yep.
Right. Right now we diagnose a lot of people with ADHD, but when we were kids, we were just like, yeah, that's called a boy. Like, what I mean? We didn't have a formal diagnosis, but when you give them Ritalin, you're taking away an edge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know that the edge is both good and bad.
Exactly. So,
right.
I mean, and then obviously for people who really require some sort of intervention like that, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I do think we need to be more cautious about these things. Like, I think we've gotten to the point where we treat, because I think there's now an emerging trend of, hey, can GLP-1 treat just addiction in general?
Yeah.
Like, can it deal with your technology addiction? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, okay,
Probably could.
It probably could, but we need to be cautious about what that means.
Yeah, and like I kind of concur with that, right? Because when you went into the food thing, I'm like, I would state that, Naveen stated you shouldn't vilify technology. I also would state that you shouldn't vilify addiction,
That's fair.
right? So both of those things are not inherently good or bad. They just are if you look at the definition of what they are.
They're part of our personalities, right?
Yeah.
So
So the question is, okay, then what is the thing you do want to vilify, right? And what is that? What do we vilify?
I think that's a great question. I don't think I have a. I think we as a society get scared when everyone is doing the same thing. And that's one of the things that I think we see with technology addiction. It's like, oh, we're all walking around just doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm okay vilifying social media addiction.
yeah,
I'm okay vilifying porn addiction. I'm okay vilifying alcohol addiction. I'm okay with vilification,
yeah.
right?
But I
But
think
I'm
the
being
key-
more precise about what that vilification is.
What would you say it is?
Well, I gave you 3 examples, right?
Okay.
Like those are examples of things I'm okay vilifying.
But like alcohol addiction, right? It's like I don't think you're saying alcohol by its very nature is
bad.
Is bad, right?
No.
You're saying it's the addiction part, right?
Yes.
So maybe the thing is over-indexing on a thing at the exclusion of others, right?
Yeah. And look, I think people say that in diets as well.
Yeah,
It's not
sure.
about like, French fries are good or bad,
Right.
just everything in moderation.
Yeah. Actually, we're talking about the health thing. Like I still let myself like on weekends, I'll have like Friday night or whatever. I'll have something that I would normally not have because food tastes good.
Yeah, food tastes good.
Right. So,
Right.
yeah.
And I think there's the ability to habituate and dishabituate.
Yeah.
Right. So whenever you find yourself in a loop, break the loop.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
It's an interesting one.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.